Hey Paul, great to see you.
Hey Ciaran, nice to see you.
Looking forward to seeing what you're going to do with this demo today.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
I think a typical scenario that we see in business is combining product inventory information with the sales CRM data. So I hope that's the demo you got. That's the one I want to see. Yeah, over to you. What can you do in Matillion Data Loader?
Okay, so the CRM data, that's Salesforce, is that right?
Yep.
And where does your sales order data come from?
Well, let's say it comes from an e-commerce website, so Postgres database?
Okay, so first of all, we can set up a batch pipeline to bring through the Salesforce data, and then we may set up a CDC pipeline for the Postgres database. So a couple of quick questions to make sure I've got the right type of pipeline. Do you need to have low impact on the database itself? For example, is it a production database? You don't want to be querying heavily.
Yeah, no, it runs our entire inventory and sales information 24/7. So yeah, we'd like it not to impact any kind of orders and any customer experience.
Okay, so a batch-based query load might not be the ideal situation. So we'll go with CDC for that one as well then. Okay, so first of all, Salesforce. So the first thing I need to do is just select the Salesforce connector from our list of connectors. So I can find it from the list, or I can filter down through the search tab. Once I've got that, I need to connect to that source. So we use OAuth to connect to Salesforce, and I've gone ahead and done that ahead of time, so I'm going to use my OAuth entry set up there. And then once I've connected to Salesforce, I then need to choose which CRM data that I need to bring over as part of this pipeline. So I think it's the account data. Is that you want to bring?
Yeah,
over?
let's go with account data, yeah.
Okay, so we can choose any number of entities from here, but we'll go with the account data. Once we've chosen the table, we just need to choose, do we want to enable the deleted records in Salesforce to come a part of this pipeline? So that could be useful for some kind of audit use case as well. So we'll keep that on, but you can turn it off later if you feel like you don't need it. So once we've got the table or the entity in Salesforce selected, we can then choose which columns we want to bring over as part of that pipeline. When we're at this stage, it's worth considering whether we're sensitive to any kind of PII information. So we can see here that there's some billing details, address details. Do you think that we should perhaps remove those from the pipeline?
So the PII data is like private information that on behalf of users?
Yes.
Yeah, this is coming from our website, so it's probably best that we strip that out and make sure nothing else basically happens further down the pipeline.
Okay, so we can filter out, if we look at all of the billing address details, which could potentially use to be identify one of these customers, we can just remove all of those columns from this data load. Once we're happy with the columns that we've selected, we can then progress to the next step, which is to choose which is the destination for this particular data load. So we're going to use Snowflake as our destination. I've pre-configured a connection to Snowflake here, and this is really handy because it allows us to reuse this connection across multiple pipelines and also populate a lot of the common default values that we're going to need. So the last thing I need from you, Ciaran, is how often should we run this pipeline?
I think daily, because like Chief Revenue Officer probably wants to come in every day and get a bit of a snapshot of what's going on. So let's put it, every day. Let's do
okay,
that.
Let's create this to sync once a day. So now we just create the pipeline. That's going to go off, do the initial load, and then once a day it will go back and create another pipeline for any incremental updates that have happened. So now that's done, what we're going to do is quickly switch over and do a CDC pipeline for that Postgres orders data as well.
So why CDC, Paul?
So as you mentioned earlier, you have a production database, so we want to try and minimize the impact on that. Yep. So a large query to go and get a load of records would be extra load that we want to try and avoid. So our log-based replication monitors the transaction logs of the database, so it doesn't have to do that big batch query. And the second thing is the type of updates that happen in the database also have some relevance. So an update and a delete versus a new record, they may all be changes, and we want to capture all of those rather than just a snapshot and a point in time.
Gotcha. There's one other bit of information I forgot to tell you is that the database actually runs in an on-prem system. It's in behind a firewall. It's not on the internet. Is that going to cause you trouble?
No. So our CDC application uses a hybrid cloud architecture. So what that basically means is we can deploy an agent inside your own environment, whether that's in a private cloud like Amazon or Azure, or in your data center on a container image. As close to the database as possible is recommended. What that means is the Matillion Cloud Platform can take all the configuration and all the management, but the actual data movement itself is behind your firewall and behind your responsibility.
Cool, great.
Okay, so what I've done is I've set up an agent, and it's actually in my private cloud, close to the Postgres database. This will take you about 5 minutes, and there is some documentation that you can follow to quickly get that set up. But once you've done that, you'll see that it shows as connected in the agents list, and then we can just go and add a pipeline. So what I want you to kind of notice straight away is the experience of setting up a CDC pipeline is almost identical to the batch pipeline. There's no real difference in terms of the flow. You don't need to go and take an expensive training course to learn how to use this product. So we're going to choose Postgres as our source database. I'm going to pop in some connection details so we can connect. Now, one interesting thing here is we used OAuth for the SaaS application. We're going to connect using a database connection string here. But what we're not going to do is pass down the password from the Matillion cloud into your private cloud. So we're going to go and use a secrets manager to securely retrieve the secret at runtime and connect to that database.
And that's in line with best practice, I presume, is it?
Absolutely, yeah. We don't want to unnecessarily pass sensitive credentials over the internet.
Great.
So I'm just going to use the entry for that secret. And I can test everything's working by clicking on the test button. That means I can actually connect to the source database. So just like before, once we've connected, we need to choose which table and which schema. So I'm going to choose this demo schema and this orders table that you mentioned. So this time we're going to choose a destination, but it's going to be a data lake rather than a data warehouse.
Ah, okay. So Paul, we've hired a bunch of expensive data scientists. They'll probably want to work on that data too. Is this something you can do, because you mentioned data lake?
Yes, so the reason that we're going to a data lake rather than a data warehouse is we're going to give much more options around how we handle this data. So one typical use case might be we want to replicate it into a table in a warehouse that looks exactly like the source table. But we might want to do other things as well. So typically data scientists, they interact with data from the data lake. So S3 is going to be our data lake in this example. And the data scientist could directly use the data in the lake there. And it applies to any other kind of processing technology that you'd want to use. So not necessarily a data warehouse, but machine learning programs, other data lake compute resources. Because the data is in a bucket, it's got much more interoperability with any other use case. So I just need to give a bucket name and then a prefix, which essentially is the folder within the bucket. And then give this a name as well. So we'll just call this orders and hit on the create pipeline. So now we're at the overview pipeline. You can see we have our Salesforce accounts pipeline that we set up earlier, and we have our orders pipeline, which we've just completed. So why this is significant is what we've got on one single screen now is a batch-based SaaS pipeline and a real-time hybrid cloud pipeline, all within a single pane of glass where we can monitor, edit, and update as we need to.
Got it.
So what I've done so far is show you how to do the actual ingestion. What we haven't done is actually look at the data itself. So let me just show you that now.
So in the background right now, Paul, is that actually loading data into a system? Is that what's going on?
So in two cases, you can see the last sync of the Salesforce data happened 3 minutes ago, and the orders data is actually in active streaming mode now. So that is picking up every change as it happens in real time, and then about once every minute, that'll be purged out to the data lake.
All right, great.
So we're in Matillion ETL now, Ciaran, something that I'm sure you'll be familiar with. But as part of this release of MDL and CDC, we've actually included a couple of new components in our ETL offering as well. So what you can see on the screen here is a component called sync all tables. And what this does is it takes the semi-structured data that we now have in the lake, and it will do one of three things. So we can either copy the table, make a direct replica of the source table. We can do that same thing with soft delete. So anything that's deleted in our Postgres database will just get flagged as a delete in the warehouse. And the final thing is an append-only full history log. So depending on the type of replication, we can set that up here. What I'm going to do is just populate the copy table so we get an exact replica of what it is in the source table.
So do users or customers have to go get a special edition, or is it just an upgrade? What do they got to get these new components?
So if you update to the latest version of Matillion ETL, those components will be there, and the CDC capability is available in any enterprise subscription of Matillion.
Sweet.
So I've just hit run job on this component. What it's going to do is, first of all, it will create an external table over the bucket. and that's useful so we can actually have a look at the data. And then it's going to take that external table, transform that into some structured data, and we can have a look at that too. So I've got two tables that I just want to show you what the data looks like. So the first one, we've got the raw changes. So that external table that we created, we'll have a look just so you can see what the pipeline is actually doing, what data is being landed.
So this is kind of semi-structured information that you've got coming into the data lake from the database?
That's right. So what actually happens is it doesn't matter if you have a Postgres, MySQL, SQL Server. We standardize the data format and we put it into some Avro files. And this is what you can see on the screen now. So you have, it's like a JSON readable document with some metadata columns. And you can see the payload of each change. So you can see the before, the after, the type of change. So that's really useful if you want to do kind of some native transformation in Snowflake using some of the lateral flattened SQL and the variant columns. And that's actually what our shared jobs will do behind the scenes. So we've had a look at the raw data. Once that job completed, which it did just a moment ago, we can then see what the structured data looks like. And you can see all we've done is take that raw data, convert that into a structured table, and it now looks exactly like the source database. So that job that we ran there, we could schedule that to run once every 5 minutes, and that will continue to take that semi-structured data, turn it into a flattened table, and then any downstream process, such as joining it to that accounts data, can then happen.
So it seems like you've got this kind of data science ready data, and then you've got analytics ready data for the BI teams?
That's correct, yes.
Great.
So just to summarize what we've done there, then we set up a batch pipeline with Salesforce. We then used our deployed agent to configure a CDC pipeline. Then we used Matillion ETL to change the raw data from the data lake into a structured table, which can now be used downstream to join those two data sets together and perform any kind of analytics that we want to do.
So Paul, in your experience, like how does this compare to other products or tools or other things you've used down through the years?
So there's many differences. I'll just highlight two. One is the hybrid cloud architecture. So as I mentioned earlier, all of the data movement happens in your environment. So we never see any of that data in Matillion. We don't go for a Matillion server or anything like that. But you get all of the benefits of SaaS software. So all of the maintenance, the simple UI, the configuration, that all happens in the Matillion cloud. And as we saw, we don't even pass passwords or credentials or anything like that. So you get the best of enterprise security, and you get the ease of use of SaaS. So that would be the first thing. The second thing is the actual way that we do the data movement itself. So in a kind of a traditional CDC application, you might go from source to target, just as we've done, and you end up with a replicated table. But the transformation from log data to structured data happens as part of that pipeline. So that compute resource needs to be allocated to the CDC pipeline itself. What we've done is we've just broken that out, used some cloud native technology like S3 buckets and Snowflake variant columns to basically push down the compute process to the application that's best suited for it. It's the most efficient way to do that kind of data load, and it's the modern kind of way to ingest data into a warehouse.
Sounds like we got this awesome productivity because you've built Matillion Data Loader leveraging some amazing cloud native capabilities.
Yeah, and that's kind of our philosophy for all the development that we do at Matillion. We're always trying to leverage the native capabilities of our supported platforms.
Awesome. Well, thanks for showing me the product.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.